times 1 million.
5,000.
You also have to.
Okay.
I read, so what's the 20-year contract, is it 60,000 versus 20,000?
Correct.
Over 20 years?
20 years.
Collision costs.
Barring accident.
Yeah, replacement of equipment.
Acts of God.
Yeah, that's what insurance is for.
Okay. I've said my comments, Councilwoman.
Well, they kind of addressed everything that I've kind of been telling them it since this was brought up back in 2017, 18, and 19. My main concern, I'm not all against it, but I'm all for it. My main concern is the safety of the kids, because we're always going to have kids, and they got to get to school. And sometimes parents just can't take them, you know, and so they have to walk. And we're talking about little elementary kids walking that area, right? They have to cross that. LED lights would help. I don't know if that, it scared me that they're going to have this traffic going around, because it is a busy intersection. My other concern was, or you mentioned that the meeting that you guys had, y'all had over 150 that were all for it. I'm not sure where that comes from, because everybody, my phone was blowing up this morning because they saw, of course, on social media that this was happening, and they're like, you know, everybody that I talked to does not want it. These are all the citizens. So I'm not sure where the 150 voters that were, or not voters, citizens were here at the meeting.
They were for the project, not
for the roundabout. Okay, I get it now.
That's kind of which question you're asking.
Yeah, okay, that's where, okay, so, but the ones that I've been talking to are not for it. I honestly, I want it to grow. We have to grow. Everybody, I've always said it, everybody's going around us. And my main concern is just the safety of kids. And it is a busy intersection, it really is. And then the property of the owners that live in those 4, you know, lots too, they're getting some of their property taken away. And I mean, I'm not sure. I know there's only 1 or 2 that are for it. And so
Councilwoman, the only thing I wanted you to be careful about, when you say they're not for it, if you put out there, do you want a roundabout in your city, and you don't put it in the context of the fact that it's been studied by 5 years by brilliant engineers, and the context of the project, I don't think you're going to get the fair feedback that you might expect.
Right.
If someone were just to put out on social media and say, hey, they're going to build a local roundabout at Yale and Meandering, it's going to kill your children, how do you feel about it? So nobody's going to say, that sounds like a good idea.
It's a little bit what's happening in reverse.
So my thing is, I actually sat down with Marvin and, who was it, and I looked at the picture, and I was thinking in my head it was going to be like the one on White Pine and Henderson and all that over there, and I was like, there's no way. But once I saw the big picture, and the way it's all, I saw the big picture, I was like, okay, this makes more sense. Because, and I'm thinking that is what's happening, and the citizens are not really understanding what the roundabout is. And I'm glad it's not going to be the 4 lanes or whatever, it's going to just be the 2 or 3 really. So
there's lots and lots of roundabouts to look at. One of the questions we got recently from the councilman is nobody's building roundabouts in residential areas.
Right.
So I just had our folks go out, take 10 minutes, go find me roundabouts in residential areas. And these are 5 examples that we found in 10 minutes in cities that are all within 10 miles of you.
Right.
Where cities are choosing to put roundabouts in residential areas where the streets are very similar. They're not all exact, but they're similar as to what we're proposing.
Okay.
And what we're trying to show, what I'm really trying to show here is the size of the project and the scope and scale of the project and the turning radius of this. Traffic is going to have to move very slow.
Right.
You know, I don't know what happened here.
What we're looking at, a 2-lane road or a 3-lane road? 2-lane.
2.
We're talking about a 3-lane road on Meandering.
No, I'm
It's hard to tell from that slide.
That's a little wider street there.
But it's probably a 2-lane road.
Yeah.
But effectively, remember, you lose the center turn lane approaching the intersection.
But then why have it? Yeah, what happened then?
Why have it? Well, the reason we have it, it's a great question.
Get in your driveway.
It's for you to get in and out of your driveway.
Well, but we've already said traffic is low.
And it would slow the traffic down if I'm turning to get in my driveway.
Not if you're in the center turn lane.
No, that's my point.
purpose.
If it's just 2 lanes, I
Well,
would potentially be
we
slowing
talked-
traffic down to get into my driveway.
We talked a lot about that. I think generally, everybody would rather have the ease of access in and out of their residential driveway, which is what this center turn lane does. It's much safer. It allows for a car that wants to turn to get out of the flow of traffic and wait for either oncoming traffic or not get rear-ended from the back while you're turning. So generally, most people feel like a center turn lane, again, on a low-volume street with relatively low speeds, where that's probably a good thing. Now, there might be difference of opinions about that, but that's how we got that.
And I can show the other.
But yes, by the time you get to the intersection, the center turn lane has to go away because we're only allowing for 1 lane to turn. So, yeah, so these are just...
So Darren didn't get started.
No, the roundabout's there.
Actually, Darren does get to turn into his business, but I'll let... I will let him speak to the amenities that we are providing Darren as part of our plans to make sure he does get in and out of his business. But these were 4 or 5 examples that we found, newly constructed roundabouts, Arlington, Colleyville, where there are in predominantly in residential areas, which was one of the concerns. They're low volume, they're very tight diameters that we found, and we can, I can probably find several hundred more, but I just found these in 10 minutes because more and more people are realizing that, you don't need to start and stop at a stop sign when most of the time, and this is what happens on the street, most of the time when you're on Meandering or Yale, there is not another car in the intersection. There are certain times of the day we saw traffic coming from the base. We would see groups of cars and like 10 or 15 at a time, and then it would be quiet for 25 or 30 minutes. Then we would see another group of cars. But it wasn't very often that we saw multiple cars in the intersection at the same time. And that's generally what you're going to see in a residential area where the traffic volumes are what they're at. I don't know, Jill, is that all?
That will be the only through street on Yale that doesn't have a stop sign. Every other through street, 4, cross street has a stop sign.
Like I said, I don't know why anybody drives up and down Yale.
Yeah, I don't,
Because of Robert's stop sign.
And we're,
I think we're,
okay,
Councilman?
Where do we start? I started going to these meetings back at the J02 meeting when Paul and them were having these back in the early 2000s. There was an issue, I think, Fort Worth, the base, River Oaks. We all had a vision to get that road redone. I know even when Mayor Holland was, and I was still at the PD here, we went to TML every year talking to all kinds of what word I'm trying to think of, construction people about this road. They all promised us that they could come out there and do an overlay on that road until they got out here, and then they said, we can do it, but it's not going to last because it's got too much water coming up from underneath. It's going to crumple. The only way you're going to fix that road is to tear it out, put new base in it, and we don't have the money to do that. Now, and I'm still that way, I still feel very strongly I would have much rather seen that be a 4-lane road than a 3-lane. But I understand after talking with Eric and Jill and Dan and all them, what their goals are trying to do. Coming from a police perspective, back when I was an officer here and later the chief, there was always a problem with the traffic coming down Yale on the Meandering Road, and people were always complaining about the speeders. And it wasn't so much the speeders, we had a volume problem, and it would stack up in the morning and in the afternoon because of the traffic going to and from the base. And you had the weekend traffic going to and from Burgers Lake that would stack up. That concerned me. When we got to talking about the difference in the intersection there, what Meandering and Yale, it looks like.